Alright, so the Paramount deal was announced yesterday in the US for the next, well, beginning 2026, 7 years, $1.1 billion annually. While that money is on the back end, but Matt Brown recently commented on this deal, and he says a lot about what this means for the fighters as a veteran of the sport who was there when they did the Fox deal and the ESPN deal. And overall, man, I really like listening to Matt Brown talk. If you guys have no idea of who Matt Brown is, Matt Brown was a beast. You look at that record and be like, well, he wasn't that good. Second most knockouts in UFC history. Knocked out Corey McGee in his final fight. Got fight of the night bonus for it. Actually got fight of the night on his last three fights. Diego Lima lost to Carlos Condit, but he was in there with the top in the welterweight. Don Cowboy Cerrone in 2016. Johnny Hendricks, Robbie Lawler. Uh, Eric Silva was decent back in the day. This guy is a legend. I without a doubt, you can't get the second most knockouts in UFC history and not be looked at as a legend. But I want to add on to what he says. Um, well, in this article, in this um episode that I can't find for the life of me. But this is not going to change anything. Matt Brown highly doubts UFC's $7.7 billion deal with Paramount benefits fighters. The UFC signing a historic 7-year, $7.7 billion deal to move to Paramount in 2026 is going to increase revenue and profits for the company, but how exactly does that affect the fighters? UFC veteran Matt Brown remains skeptical that anything at all changes for the athletes because he knows from history that deals with Fox and ESPN didn't exactly reset the market when it came to what fighters were being paid. While salaries naturally get higher as time passes, the UFC more than doubling the revenue earned from a 7-year deal with ESPN to move to Paramount doesn't mean the fighters are suddenly going to get paid to a comparable amount. Obviously, Brown can't say anything for certain until the deal kicks in at the start of 2026, but he has reservations about any of that money really making a difference for the athletes. I need a sip of water. Cool. It sounds like another brilliant, gigantic win for the UFC, Brown said. The same question is going to come up every time something happens with the UFC when they get these brilliant, gigantic wins as a business. So far, none of it has done anything good for the fighters. We have to ask, is this going to be something good for the fighters? That's going to be my question every time. Is there something that's going to benefit the fighters in any ways? Of course, we're early in the deal. We just heard about it today. If history tells us anything, this is not going to change anything for fighters. Maybe it will. We're going to have to see how that plays out. Truth be told, Brown understands that the UFC is operating like a business, and the goal for every business is making money. The UFC has continuously posted record revenues year over year after selling to Endeavor for just over $4 billion in 2016. With the company now valued at nearly triple that amount, and that's not even considering the partnership now shared with WWE operating under the same umbrella. Add to that, fighters have never really banded together to ask for better wages or improved benefits. They kinda are though. And Brown just doesn't expect that that's going to change in the wake of this new deal for the UFC. We do have the antitrust lawsuits, which I know there's only been three of them. I think there's a fourth one currently going on. Um, but again, the where the sport was a year ago, it's a different sport now. The big thing now is for the UFC, and this is not me defending the UFC. The UFC now is a big mainstream sport. It's a mainstream name, a household name. Everybody has heard about the UFC. They are going to give you a platform where you can come in, you're going to get time in media, you're going to build a following, and it's up to you to really take that ball and run with it. Now, the UFC has done a fucking terrible job at promoting fighters, and I've been trashing it the entire year. But again, I do get how this is a business, like Matt Brown says. It needs to be 50-50, I believe. It needs to be these fighters are making an active effort to put their name out there, and it needs to be met with Dana White and the UFC acknowledging that and pushing these fighters, pushing these interviews. You know, you remember the days when Dana White would announce a fight card. He would have something to say about every fighter, even the fighters that just signed right now. He could tell you five things about them off the top of his head. He doesn't do that anymore. But let's continue. Looking at history, there's no indication the fighters are going to come together. Looking at history, the UFC has no reason to anticipate them coming together to fight. You want to argue against the UFC? You want to debate the UFC? You want to fight the UFC? Alright, we'll sign the next 100 guys to replace you. We'll make them a star. We'll put them on the countdown show. This is no problem. We'll give them the main event quickly. We'll give them a couple of bumps. We'll build another patty. There's 1,000 patties out there, right? This is very different. This is very difficult situation for fighters. It doesn't make sense for them to come together. I said this a million times before. Our job is to beat the other guy. Our job is to take his money. That's literally our profession. So to ask us to come together and help out other guys that we literally fight against, it doesn't make any real sense. Brown also knows from personal experience that many fighters come from very humble beginnings, and earning a five-figure payday is often seen as life-changing money. During his own career, the Ohio native admits he rarely battled for higher pay during contract negotiations, and he really only realized later in life how much money he probably left on the table. The fact is, you really think about it. The vast majority of fighters are like traumatized motherfuckers coming from poor families and poor lives and have poor mentalities, and their only chance is to fight. I'm not saying there's not the rich Franklins out there who are very smart and the George St. Pierres that are very intelligent and get out at the right time. The vast majority, they didn't go to college. They didn't pass on a college scholarship to come into the UFC. It's the type of shit that's drawn. It's the type of person that's drawn to competing in this sport is not the type to fight for that shit. When you come from that and you get that 20K payday, that feels fucking good. I was there. I was a poor motherfucker. That was like I got that 20K payday, and then I'm on TV and in the UFC. I think I got off the Ultimate Fighter. It was 3,500. I got a couple bonuses, like finish bonuses. I think I got like 10K or something. I thought I was fucking rich, and I'm on TV, and I'm getting appearances for whatever $500 for an appearance. You feel special as a motherfucker. Then you got Dana talking about you. Everything feels great. To get the guy to fight against the UFC against TKO, you're out of your fucking mind. Even when Brown got advice from the other fighters telling him to focus more on long term success when negotiating with the UFC, he effectively ignored it. Try to explain this to Bryce Mitchell or fucking Renato Moicano. You think that's going to strike any nerves? No, they're living a lifestyle far and above what they were before. We feel like so fucking great. We feel so gracious, and I'm saying this because I've been there. I was that guy. I don't give a fuck. What I'm paid? Fuck you. I remember Rich Franklin told me one time, you've got to treat this like a business. You have to negotiate like it's a business. You have to do an LLC. All of this stuff. And I remember in the back of my head thinking how big of a fucking pussy he was. I was like, I'm a fucking lawyer, bro. I don't do business. I don't think that's a rare feeling. I don't think that's an odd feeling. Assuming history repeats itself, Brown can't help but remain skeptical that the fighters are really benefit at all from the $7.7 billion deal, especially with no specific contractual agreements in place, forcing the UFC to dish out more money. Now, really quick, I want to jump in here before we continue. There's a lot of guys like Matt Brown who do, you know, stray away from the advice in that locker room. And like, I grew up a WWE fan. I watch Inside the Ropes, right? Those old guys, Chris Jericho, Paul Heyman, the guys in the 90s and the 80s who go on there. And they really break down, like, what it was like negotiating with Vince and, like, pushing for the angles and who they want to work with. And it's the exact same thing you would need to do as a fighter, right? And I would love if we lived in this perfect world where, you know, this sport gave everybody the exact same promotion. Had everybody doing interviews and that. It's not the case. That's really not the case. A lot of these guys are really just here because they come from a rough background or they just want to prove I'm the best inside this cage. I can beat any motherfucker there is. And that's what I hope this Paramount deal does. I hope it fixes that. What you have to, let's continue though. What you have to realize, if you're not going to do anything about it, you're essentially a Roman gladiator like one of the slaves. You may not feel that way because you got to pay your house off, because you're driving a fucking Mercedes, because you're wearing nicer clothes than you ever had before. You're not actually living in the pit or whatever in the Roman days, but that is where you are. The Emperor is there, and he can cut your head off at any time he wants. He can send you back to the farm at any time he wants. This is literally what we are as fighters. If you're okay with that, that's cool. Just know that is the case. They're profiting a lot of money off your name. This isn't me hating the UFC. I respect what the fuck they've done. I studied what they do. How can I make my business better? I'm not saying I would ethically do all the things they do, but they're very good businessmen. They know very well what they're doing. They're making big deals, and you have to respect that. But the whole problem is there's not a counterbalance to them. At this time, there are several okay, what I brought up quicker than the article. At this time, there are several antitrust lawsuits working through the courts with hopes that the justice system might potentially change the way USC does business, but Brown even has his doubts that really works. Look no further than the recent settlement where Paramount paid $60 million to close a lawsuit filed against the company by President Donald Trump, and then the days later, the FCC approved a deal to allow Skydance to buy entertainment conglomerate, to buy the entertainment conglomerate for $8 billion. 100%. 100%. This is what I want these veterans to point out. This is what I want to see from these guys to, they're retired, maybe they're close to retirement. This is like the behind the curtain um thinking. I love to see, like, this is what makes me a fan. And I hope that's the same with you. That deal closing is what paved the way for Paramount to then offer 7.7 billion to purchase the entire broadcast rights package of the UFC. That's huge money for the UFC, but Brown can't see that paying off for the fighters. They don't have to pay fighters more. They do not. I promise you that. They will get away with it. So just recognizing that you can make your own decision if you want to call your congressman or whatever and try to fix this. But that is what the facts are of the case. There's no counterbalance. The UFC does what they want, when they want, how they want, as big as they want, and nobody is saying, hey, motherfucker, what about us? It's just the facts of the matter. It just needs to happen. There needs to be a counterbalance. There's no historical stat saying anything is going to change if you're a fighter. Don't get your hopes up. This is 100% why I love this guy. I really, really hope I get the chance to interview Matt Brown. Like, Matt Brown is a legend. But what I said in my video yesterday, and my videos about the White House card and that, this structure of the pay per view, the pay per view model, we're still gonna do it everywhere else, but the U.S. You look at these are like the biggest pay per view fights of all time. Mayweather, Pacquiao, Mayweather, McGregor. Those are anomalies. UFC 229, 2.4. Um, Tied with De La Hoya Mayweather and beat Mayweather versus Canelo. 257, Poirier McGregor 2, when um, Poirier knocked out McGregor. McGregor was returning in 2021. Then you got Diaz McGregor 2. McGregor won the rematch after Diaz made himself a superstar. McGregor 3. You, you look at these names, and then you look at these numbers, right? 1 million, 1 million, 9. Well, let's go back to the top. 4.6 down to 4.3, and then 2.4, 2.4, 2.2, 1.6, 1.6, 1.6, 1.3, 1.2, and the lowest one to cost a million was UFC 200 with which Sylvester Jones versus DC2. Jones popped. Brock Lesnar fought Mark Hunt, popped after, well, before and after the fact. But this was the pay per view structure is more dog eats dog than any other kind of structure within media, right? Because you say $80 a pay per view. That's what it's at now, right? Say you have your champion has points. I don't know. Let's say every thousand. Well, let's say like every few thousand he makes however much, and I think it goes up like it goes up in increments. Like I think it's up to like 100K and then 150, 200. I'm not sure what it is anymore. The last time I knew something about how pay per view points work, it was like basically tiers, right? So the more you sold, the more points you got. Yeah, like you get it. But now that we're moving away from this in the US, and eventually it's going to be worldwide because pay per view is just dead. It then becomes a matter of who has the biggest following and who draws the biggest engagement. Now, engagement is something as a YouTuber, as somebody who rambles on the internet about MMA. Engagement is something I know a lot about, and anybody else who has ever posted anything on the social media, you know it. So you have Khabib and Conor McGregor, anomalies, right? Both were in the biggest pay per view of all time. Khabib, 29-0, probably the greatest ambassador of MMA we've ever had. Ronda Rousey is still up there at 17. Islam's at 10 mil. Holy shit. Khabib Whitaker has 30 point, no, 30 million more. Shit. For 10.2, 9.93, 9.46, 8.64, and you get it. Like, we have a lot of MMA fighters right now that have over 1 million followers, and the guys who are around there, you got Sterling, former champ, Frankie. Shout out Frank. Go fucking follow Frankie Edgar, dude. What the fuck is this shit? Frankie Edgar's a legend, dude. Like, holy shit. Dude, he's a lightweight run. It was fucking unbelievable. But we're getting rid of the pay per view model for streaming, for viewership, for clips, for clicks, right? Basically, what I think this move will do for fighters is you're going to be under you're going to be under the UFC. The UFC, it is a top five sport at worst. And I really do think over the next 7 years, this sport is going to take over NHL. This sport is going to go head to head with NFL, and it's a year round sport. That's one of the advantages they have over every other sport, really. But for a fighter, right, like Matt Brown, he didn't have that social media. He didn't have, the YouTube landscape. He didn't have the MMA community and MMA social media where it is today, or there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and millions of videos and clips of the fight game of every fighter. Like, dude, it's so weird to me that like I type in my tags and that on my shorts. And like for shits and giggles, I'll just throw in names like Tim Elliott. Or like I made a video about Ian McCall and he talked about his struggles in the sport. The more engagement these fighters get and the UFC gets on social media, the bigger and bigger this sport will get. Like the Francis situation, which I may do a video on tomorrow after I do my predictions, where nobody got that Renan Ferreira fight, but everybody and their mother watched Francis win that fight in the PFL. Um, it's going to be a different world. It's going to be a much different world. Do I think fighters are going to get a lot of that money? Not really. But I hope that Paramount, the UFC, they give them more interviews. They gave them more screen time. They gave them more analysts. Like, I want them to build these names to the point where they're fighting for the fun of the sport. We live in a time with social media. We have a lot of fighters even now, like Demetrius Johnson, man. Demetrius Johnson made fuck all in the UFC, and the dude is dominating YouTube. Chael Sonnen for years. You know, he was a big name back in the day, but he wasn't out here making, the major bucks. I guarantee you, if Chael broke down his numbers on his channel, he's making good fucking money. And that's what I think the UFC cop out is, and I hate it. I think it should be a mix between, hey, you come under our brand, you give it your all, you perform, you get the fans behind you, we'll promote you under this banner, but you have to meet us halfway with social media. You gotta learn how this fight game works. What makes people wanna buy a ticket? Bubba Ray Dudley, strike a chord, sell a ticket. One of the things that stood to me, that has stood with me for so many years, ever since I heard Paul Heyman tell that story. Strike a chord, sell a ticket. But we will have to see it once again. Matt Brown, legend dude. I love listening to the guy. I think he's one of the sharpest veterans out there. Second most knockouts. Absolute badass. So let me know. I know this has been a longer video, but I like doing these kind of videos. We're talking about like the business, and I was gonna pull actually those of you that stuck around until the 30-minute mark. Yeah, I'm gonna give you a treat here. So I'm gonna expose myself, right? No, Diddy. Okay, so this is my viewership, right? Over the course of 2025, I've gotten nearly 400,000 views, 1.3k subs. Which, by the way, thank you guys. Like these numbers are fucking incredible. Okay, I'll show you like 2024, right? 690, 1.2k, 1.37. We're only, well, I guess we're at the end, well, nearing the end of August. This is what you guys give me for rambling incoherently about this sport. This engagement, if me and nobody with cerebral palsy can pull this in, an MMA guru can pull in the viewership that it does, these guys, give or take, I think if they build a big enough name within this sport over the course of their career, and they go into YouTube, they go into Instagram. I don't know what the Instagram, um, monetization. I know X has theirs now. These guys can be making a shitload of money and building their brand as they are fighting. That way, they don't need to stay in for, until they're 40, until, to the point where they're getting knocked out in every one of their fights and they're on a 6, 7, 8 fight losing streak. This is the different element that I don't think Matt Brown is working at. And I just hope that over the next 7 years, again, I hope that the streaming and the pay per view model, I hope it's gone for everybody. Canada, US, pay per view is dead, but If I can pull this kind of viewership, man, you guys are probably fucking double what I get. Just get out there, turn on your camera, talk shit about Dana White, make a mockery of how they're promoting the sport, and promote the sport the way it fucking should be. It should be a bunch of degenerate fight fans bitching about why they think their favorite fighter will annihilate whoever they're fighting next. Let's get this fucking sport growing, dude. But that's what I got. Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think about what Matt Brown said? Again, if I can find that full interview, I will leave it linked down below, or I'll probably just make a short post it there. But yeah, let me know what you think down below. Thanks for watching. Love each and every one of you. Later.